Oh, hello. You know, the most important goal of Commander is to have fun. I know, groundbreaking stuff, but one aspect of having fun in Commander is winning. No, it's true. It's really fun when you win a game of Commander, or so I am told. That being said, you are probably making a lot of mistakes when you play Commander. It may be a casual format, but it is also an extremely complex one. And it can be hard for many Magic the Gathering players to identify when they make mistakes in Commander, let alone address those mistakes so that they don't make the same mistakes again. But don't worry, that's why I'm here. In today's video, I will outline 5 of the biggest mistakes that you are probably making in the game of Commander and how you can avoid making those mistakes in future games. I'll talk about why these mistakes are mistakes, how to recognize them when they happen, and what you should do instead. After all, Magic, even casual Magic, is a skill that can be improved upon by building good habits. So, that being said, what are the biggest mistakes that Commander players make? Let's take a look. But before we go any further, I gotta talk to you about Rampant Growth. Yes, Rampant Growth. This is a great card. This is a cool card, but it's not for everyone. Or more specifically, it's not for every Commander deck. There are many awesome, excellent Commander decks that don't use Rampant Growth, and that is just fine. It depends on what you want as a player, as a deck designer, and by that same token, I want you to know about your appearance, your looks. They're great whether you happen to be bald or going bald, whether you happen to have long hair, short hair, or no hair at all. It's all sexy, baby. But if you are someone who does want to prevent hair loss or foster hair growth, I highly recommend checking out Keeps, sponsor of today's video. Whether you're looking to prevent hair loss, stimulate hair growth, or just take better care of the hair you have, Keeps has you covered with professional, scientifically proven care. Keeps offers personalized care to address your unique hair goals, all from the comfort of your own home. Simply complete an online consultation to get matched with a provider who will tailor a treatment plan, if medically appropriate, that's specific to what you want your hair to look like. Keeps also offers hair thickening shampoo, conditioner, and styling pomade. These products work together to support healthy hair growth with natural science-backed ingredients. And best of all, if you don't want pesky blue players disrupting your hair growth plan, Keeps delivers treatments directly to your door in discreet, non-branded packaging. Remember, you are beautiful with long hair or no. It's how you want to present yourself to the world, but if Mother Nature has another idea in store and you're interested in using Keeps as a tool to take control of your appearance, then head over to keeps.com/Tolarian or click the link in the description for a special offer to get started. Again, that's keeps.com/Tolarian. Hair loss stops with Keeps, and thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. Combat mistakes. One of the most common areas that many Magic the Gathering players would benefit from improving is the combat phase. Attacking and blocking errors plague even seasoned veterans of the Magic combat trenches. These types of errors often go unnoticed, because unless the error is as clear-cut as, oops, I attacked my 2/2 into my opponent's 2/3, it's very easy to make mistakes in combat and never realize their impact, often many turns later. Right off the bat, you almost certainly would benefit from attacking more often than you currently do. Nobody wants their Commander game to drag on too long, but many Magic the Gathering players are reluctant to get into combat. Meanwhile, 40 life per player is a ton of life to work through, and the only way to start chipping into that life is to turn your creatures sideways. A good rule to keep in the back of your head is a sentence that is often said among limited players. If a creature isn't blocking, it should probably be attacking. There are, of course, some obvious exceptions. If all your opponents have blockers that would kill your creature in combat, then by all means keep your guy at home. Or if your creature has some activated ability that involves tapping itself, then that's another great reason not to attack. But for the most part, if there is an open opponent you can attack and a creature capable of attacking, then you should probably send that creature into combat. The game's gotta end eventually, right? But that's just the basics. Sometime an attack is advisable, even if some of your creatures won't make it out of combat alive. This becomes more and more true as more players are eliminated. If your opponent gets to block their larger creature on your smaller creature, but you're getting in for 15 or 20 damage, that is often a beneficial exchange for you. You effectively traded that small creature for a pile of damage. On the flip side, knowing how to block is an underrated skill as well. Chump blocking is usually something you should not do unless letting the attack through would kill you or your blocking creature is truly expendable. Otherwise, it's usually smart to just take the hit and keep your guys on board. If you have the opportunity to do so, it's often a good idea to assign extra blockers to an opponent's attacking creature to play around any combat tricks or removal your opponent might be holding up. If your opponent is attacking you with creatures that appear to be outsized by your blockers, then take a moment before assigning blocks to ask yourself why they might be doing that. Could they have some kind of combat trick? Do they get some benefit from attacking that's worth throwing their creatures away for? Taking that extra moment to think could go a long way towards saving you from a devastating blowout. Mistaken threat assessment. Sometimes a player at the table suddenly wins the game after flying under the radar for several turns. Usually when this happens, it's not entirely out of the blue. There were signs that you could have recognized sooner. Often there was a key permanent or a couple key permanents that you could have interacted with many turns ago. Players often talk about threat assessment in Commander, but usually only refer to the player at the table who is the threat. But there is so much more to threat assessment than that. Threats can also be threatening cards at the table, even if the player who owns those cards doesn't appear to be a threat themselves just yet. When looking around the table, take a moment to think about what the most dangerous cards on the board are. These often look like big creatures or creatures with powerful abilities, powerful mana sources or engines, card advantage engines, combo pieces waiting for their +1, stacks pieces preventing one or more players from enacting their game plan. Now, threat assessment does not necessarily mean threat response. You can recognize something as a threat without acting on that knowledge right away. Perhaps a card can win your opponent the game, but is it doing so right now? If so, can you afford to wait, or do you need to answer it before it has the opportunity to do so? Is this annoying stacks piece in play keeping another dangerous thing in check? And if so, is it worth living with it for a little while? Ask yourself, is someone else likely to remove a threatening card if you don't interact with it yourself, so you can hold on to your interaction for something else down the line? These are the types of questions that are worth asking about as the game progresses. In a 4-player game as complex as Magic is, recognizing who is winning is not always simple. What is a lot easier to identify is recognizing which specific cards on the table are the most problematic and then finding out the best window to interact with those cards. And always remember, watch out for the quiet player. They may be amassing a winning position right under your nose.
I do agree that, like, in my limited experience playing Commander, the player in center position usually wins because they just don't do anything, do a whole bunch of, like, I'm gonna do stuff over here. Oh, I won while we beat the crap out of each other. So, but either way, Boo's gotta go.
Timing and sequencing errors. Another mistake players often make is with timing and sequencing of their spells. It's very common for a player to cast one spell, then go cast another, only to realize that it would have been a lot better to cast the two spells in the opposite order. In a similar vein, many players take actions at sorcery speed that they could have taken at instant speed. You should always think through your turn before you start casting spells. What cards do you want to play this turn? Does the order in which you play those cards matter? What happens if I play these cards in one order? What happens if I play them in the other order? You should probably attack first before you cast spells, because your opponents might interact in combat in a way that would change the plays you want to make on your turn. You also want them to have the least amount of information possible before deciding whether to interfere with your combat step. If a card you want to cast is an instant, it is likely smart to wait to cast it until the end step of the opponent who goes just before your next turn. There's just no reason to do it on your turn, since actions your opponents take on their turn might impact what you want to do and vice versa. Information is the most important factor for making and sequencing your decisions in Magic. Some actions don't require information, such as activating an ability that draws you a card. Other actions do require information, such as selecting a card to draw from among 3 possible options, or casting a removal spell on a problematic permanent. You should therefore always make decisions that don't require information first, as they'll give you more information for the subsequent harder decisions. Trying to list all the examples of this kind of decision sequencing would get too complicated, but as long as you think about the things you want to do before you do them and order them so the decisions that require information happen after the decisions that don't, you'll do just fine. For example, if you plan to draw an additional card this turn and remove an opponent's threat, you should always draw the card first before casting your removal spell, since you could draw a different removal spell you want to cast instead, or even draw a card that changes your plan entirely. Decision paralysis. An underrated but common mistake many players make is finding themselves with a serious case of decision paralysis. We've all been there. It's turn 7. A lot of stuff has happened. You're looking at a complicated board full of stuff with several cards in your hand and lots of mana to spend on those cards, and you just have no idea what to do. But not only does decision paralysis make games drag out longer than they otherwise would, but the decisions you make in these spots are often worse if you feel rushed or if your mind just goes blank. Fortunately, there are a lot of ways to both get yourself out of this headspace and to avoid finding yourself in a deer in the headlights position altogether. Start with the easy actions you know you're going to do. Do you have a land you can play? Do you know you're going to want to attack before you do anything else? Once you've gotten these easy decisions out of the way, there are a series of additional questions that you can always ask yourself. First off, how much mana do I have? This is the most important factor to your turn, as it limits what you can do. Second, take a look at the board. Think about threat assessment. What are the scary cards and how do they affect what I want to do this turn? Who are the scary players and what can I do about them? Third, look at the cards in your hand. What role can they serve this turn? How much mana do they cost? Are there any cards I can immediately discount and ignore, like a ramp spell in the late game, for example, or removal for a permanent type that is not in play? Fourth, think about what your board state is missing or would benefit from having. Think about whether this turn should advance your game plan, or if you need to take action to interfere with another player's game plan. Finally, articulate your options to yourself. What would the immediate result of each option be? Are there any that seem clearly better or worse, or do they all seem relatively equal? If you're really feeling stuck, just pick something and move on. Even if it turns out to not be the optimal play, that's not the end of the world. I highly recommend using your opponent's turns to plan ahead for your own turn. 75% of the game is someone else's turn, which means you have a lot of time to think about what you might do on your next turn. A lot of the questions I just laid out can be asked and answered before you even get to your turn. Just don't get tunnel vision. Be prepared to adapt to what your opponents end up doing on their turn and what card you draw for your own. Playing games in a vacuum. The last and most crucial mistake players make is playing the game as if they are in a vacuum. Players play out the cards in their hand based on what their deck wants to do, as if their opponents aren't even there. Very little time is spent thinking about the secrets hidden in their opponent's hands. See, a game of Magic is like a dance. There is a give and take. All players at the table are trying to enact their game plan while simultaneously preventing each other from enacting their own game plan. The players who better predict their opponent's moves, adjust their plan based on those moves, and spend some time thinking about whether or not their predictions were correct after the fact will be more successful at executing their own plan in the long run. Let's say you think your opponent is likely to cast their commander on their next turn. Does that likelihood change your play for your current turn? Or maybe an opponent has a lot of cards in hand, but hasn't been playing out any creatures or casting any spot removal spells for the past couple turns. What do they likely have? Is a board wipe imminent? If so, is it possible for you to prepare for it? Perhaps by not overextending your own board into it, or by holding up a counter spell or protection spell of some kind. Or maybe your opponent has been casting a lot of card draw spells and looks to be getting some kind of combo online. Do you have any way to prepare some interaction for their combo, or do you need to attack them more aggressively to kill them before they can pull off the combo? These are just a few examples, but asking these kind of questions as the game progresses will help you prepare for the tumultuous winds of a typical Commander game. Sometimes, despite your best guesses as to what your opponents have, they're going to surprise you anyway. When that happens, remember that you have agency over how you respond. It's just as important to be flexible with your plan as it is to be intentional with it. Yes, you should have a sense of what you will likely do as the game progresses, but you should not be so locked into that plan that you can't roll with the punches. Unfortunately, making a few mistakes is an inevitable part of Magic. You'll never eliminate them completely, but you can learn to recover from them when they happen. If you make a misplay, don't let that rattle you. Take the resulting game state as it is and make your next plays based on what is currently happening rather than thinking about how much better things would have been for you if you hadn't made that mistake. If you want to spend time thinking about your mistakes, there will be plenty of time after the game is over. Think about the various turning points in the game. Was there a point when you fell behind? Did a specific card take over the game single-handedly? Or was it more a series of events that happened in sequence? Was there anything else you could have done differently? Don't be afraid to ask the other players at the table what things they noticed or why they made the decisions they made. Most players love talking about their thought processes in Magic, and hearing another player's perspective can make a huge difference in getting better as a player. At the end of the day, you can get better at Commander, not just by watching out for these mistakes, but by learning how to be a better player with the types of decks that you pilot. If you have not already watched our brand new episode of Tolarian Tutor, where we cover the control archetype in Commander, you can check that video out here or linked in this video's description. I guarantee giving it a watch, whether you play control or not, will make you a better player by giving you new strategies and ideas to think about. And just as I hope you will check that video out, I hope very much this video has been of some help to you. Are there other mistakes that many Commander players often make that I did not cover? Let me know about them in the comments below. And remember, whether you have short hair, long hair, are bald or balding, you are sexy and gorgeous, however you choose to appear. But if you choose to appear as someone with hair and Mother Nature has another thing in store, then you should check out Keeps. That's because hair loss stops with Keeps. And right now you can get a special offer by heading over to keeps.com/Tolarian or just clicking the link in this video's description for that special offer to get started. Again, that's keeps.com/Tolarian. Hair loss stops with Keeps. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Players learn Magic the Gathering.
I'm Paul from Team APS. I'm playing the Warhammer Precon.
I'm Alec. I'm playing Dog Meat.
I am Larry from Team APS, Davros, the Dalek creator.
The Precon I selected is Samwise Gamgee. I have created upgrade packets for you.
Cast Supply Llama.
Is that a Fortnite llama?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Wait,
alliance.
did we make an alliance or did you? They just shake
People
that
with
easy.
dog
Didn't even
or-
negotiate.
It's very vanilla.
I've been described as very vanilla.
And we are going to start my villain phase.
Let me get this straight. Lose a card.
Yes.
Or you gain a card.
It's a villainous choice. I'm sorry. It happened again.
Yeah, there's some
Is
of the
that
upgrades.
Ash?
Wait, I think I know this.